Hello, my name is Penny Zenker, and we are Take Back Time. And I'm excited today because we're going to talk about a topic that actually is near and dear to my heart recently, which is overwhelm. I've got a lot going on. I'm sure a lot of you have a lot going on. And just because I talk about time management and different aspects of stress management doesn't mean that I don't experience it as well. So we just get good at finding out what works for us. And sometimes it works for us until it doesn't, in case any of you have recognized that. And then sometimes we need new strategies to help us through different types of overwhelm and different types of challenge. So I'm excited about what I can learn from today as well. I'm excited to have Mark Silverman with us today. He came to coaching after a successful career in technology. So he and I are kindred spirits in a lot of different ways. I started in technology as well. And he generated over $90 million for a fast growing startup by bringing together executives, technical leaders, and stakeholders to close complex multi-million dollar sales. He's also the author of the best-selling Only 10's 2.0, Confront Your To-Do List, Transform Your Life. And I'm sure he's going to give us some tips from there. And he sold over 75,000 copies to date. Wow. For those of you who don't know, that's a big deal. And he's host of Mastering Overwhelm podcast. So he knows this whole podcast thing really well. He leads workshops internationally, helping CEOs and senior executives to focus on making sure the right work gets done in their organization. So without further ado, Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We're totally kindred spirits because I love what you just said in the introduction. It's, I am a time management guru and I get overwhelmed, right? And when I start my workshops, I said, look, I can't keep you from being getting into overwhelm. If you run a business, if you're trying to raise a family, if you're trying to stay fit and you're trying to keep your romantic partner interested in you, you're going to be overwhelmed. What I can help with is getting you out of overwhelm. So I love that you're, human about this.
Absolutely. We just have to get better at it, right? And have the right practices. It's funny because, and for those listening, I think it's important because they might be listening to this and go, okay, Mark, fix me, right? A lot of people who, they're like, oh, you're going to teach me everything I need to know about time management or time blocking or whatever, and then you're going to fix me. Well, that's unrealistic, right? In terms of that. So, but we're going to get to some great tips that are going to support people so that they can put those into practice.
Awesome.
So let's start out with, learning a little bit about you. What puts you into overwhelm? You've run some really big businesses. You've, sold a lot of books. What overwhelms you?
Everything. So I think, our greatest challenge is probably what turns into our greatest gift. For me, I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until my 40s. We were having my son tested, so the whole family got tested, so he wouldn't feel singled out, right? Okay. And the psychiatrist says, "So do you know who's off the charts?" And I don't even know how they function. And I'm pointing to my ex-wife, and they said, "Dad, how do you even get anything done? You are so off the charts. It's like, how do you function?" I was like, oh, right. So for me,
it makes sense.
I've spent my, when I was younger, when I was 27, I was homeless, living in my truck, came to Washington, D.C. to borrow some money from my brother, 135 pounds, right? Just a mess. That and getting diagnosed later in life, after I got sober, after I became successful, I realized why it took me twice as long to get half as far, why I had to work twice as hard to stay on task, all those kinds of things, because I had this thing going on with my brain. So I was in overwhelm about everything, right? Going from homeless to being a millionaire with kids and a wife and a career and all that stuff. I wasn't equipped for that. So everything was big.
Massive change too, right? I mean, that in itself is huge. And then all that goes along with each one of those.
Right. So for me, catching up with that, I always felt behind everybody else. So the feeling of overwhelm when I sit at my desk and my accountant says, it's time to pay your quarterly taxes. And I have to figure out how to get in the website and where are my passwords and all of this stuff. The simplest things will bring up overwhelm. So in order to have not just a functioning life, but to have a joyful life of, for me, ease and lack of stress, meditation, journaling, exercise, eating right, all those things so that I can have that. But as far as my to-do list, that was a really hard one for me. I was really having trouble staying on task. So, you wrote a book on time management, and you wrote a holistic book about time management. Most of the programs that people buy are systems, right?
Right.
And
I have a top-down approach, and I wouldn't even call it time management, but yes, you're right, is that a lot of people are helping people with that tactical system.
And the problem is they all work. Like I did David Allen's Getting Things Done twice. I paid him $1,500 twice to sit in that room and learn how to, do, lettering on my files and write everything down twice, read the book twice, and I still couldn't keep track of anything. And the
I want
was
to stop you for a second, and then we'll come back to that. You said something I think is important for everybody to hear. They all work.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just talk a moment about that, because they all work. They do all work if you implement it and if it's right for you personally, right?
Yeah, they're great. I love all those programs, and I get, because I have ADD, I'm a dopamine addict. I love a new program. I love to set up a new journal, a new thing, a new system, and all that. It's keeping it going is the problem. And here was the dirty little secret I figured out. I didn't have a time management problem. I had an honesty problem. So I had a friend who called me the other day, and she's an adult and running a business, and she finally got on some ADD meds. And she says, I took the meds, and I still didn't get anything done that I wanted to get done. I just was really intensely focused on Instagram, right? Like I said, here's the problem with the meds is you have to decide what you're going to do. You have to point the ship before you take that pill. Otherwise, you're just going to be intensely interested in, Netflix. So for me, I realized that I lied all the time. I lied about what I was willing to do, what I wanted to do, what I was capable of doing. I was a people pleaser. I was all things to all people. I dropped the ball all the time. I didn't stay on my own priorities. I lied. I said I was going to do this on this day. I didn't do it. There was no, until there was a consequence. And then when there was a consequence, so, we talked about how I sold $90 million worth of stuff for different startups, right? I did all of that at the end of every quarter. I wasn't the guy who was systematically closing, right? It was when, hey, Silverman, are you going to make your number this quarter? I'm like, oh yeah, last week. And I blow it through, and I overachieve by so much because I love the dopamine hit of being the, savior of the game.
Right. And it's that pressure, right? I mean, a lot of people who procrastinate talk about that they need that pressure to get it done in the last minute. And that's the impetus for them.
So for me, that was when the jig was up. That was when I realized I put a lot of stuff on my to-do list that I never intended to, like I intended to do, but I never really was committed to doing. And I stopped and I realized that there was a few things that I actually did in life that were pretty monumental, and they got done because I was committed to them. So I started looking at what I was doing during the week, and I started to, can we curse on this podcast?
Don't typically, but you can.
Well, anyway, I realized what was bullshit on my to-do list. I started to see that I would put something on there without the commitment to getting it done. And I started, so there were things on my list that were placeholders. I'd like to get it done. There were things that I should do because it's a really good idea. There were things I'm going to do next week, but I don't want to forget about it. So it's on my to-do list, right? So we start putting those things on the list. And again, with ADD, everything screamed at me at the same volume. I couldn't do A, B, C, big rocks, little rocks. It was just all screaming at me. So I
all there. I mean, I want people who are listening, because they might be going, oh, I don't have ADD, so this isn't for me. So I want people to be able to pull out those nuggets, right? To be able to understand, first of all, and I don't mean this in any disrespect to people who have been diagnosed with ADD, but we are living in a state of distraction. And it's almost as if we all have ADD, that we're being pulled in so many different directions. And I know it's not the same, so I don't want to make
it almost is, though, because, I'm reading Johan Hari's Stolen Focus, and he talks about how, like, it's just everywhere. And we have changed, we have lost as a society 10 points in our IQ because of this attention problem for everybody. But let's go back to the reason the ADD was such a game changer. So I wrote this book for myself. I decided this summer, I'm going to get a PhD in how to pay attention and get my stuff done. I'm going to learn this for myself. And this was in 2015. And my coach was joking with me. He says, Mark, I don't know that it's a book. It sounds like a pamphlet or a PDF or something. I'm like, well, I'm writing a book. And I wrote this book and I thought my mother would buy it and I would buy it. But I would get a PhD in how to pay attention, right? So I write this book and it sells 1,500 copies in the first day. Then the next day, then the next day. Wow. And it's selling. And then coaches are calling me and saying, I'm giving this book to my CEO clients. I'm like, what do you mean? I didn't even get a copy editor. It has spelling errors and grammar errors, and 50,000 copies of this book goes out with all these errors in it. But people are giving it to executives because it's getting to the root of why we fail at all these time management technologies, because we're not honest about what we're willing to do, what we're not going to do. Now, here's the problem. Here's the challenge. Once we get honest, and I do this in my Mastering Overwhelm workshop, I get a bunch of leaders, a leadership team in the room, and I have them write everything down. Mm-hmm. When we start to look at things on your list that don't belong there, we start to see that there's what I call qualifiers on everything on your list. And that's the reason behind why something's on your list. So things are on your to-do list, not because of the thing itself. It's because you're avoiding a consequence or you want a reward. So who likes, you're a coach, you're a speaker. You don't feel like doing invoicing, right? You don't want to do your invoicing. I don't want to do my invoicing, but you want to get paid. I don't want to pay my taxes. I just don't want the penalties. So we do these. So everything has a qualifier. So I have them start to look at what needs to be delegated. They start looking at all the things that are supposed to be delegated on their list. Great. Now we know we're supposed to delegate. The problem is all the resistance to why you would delegate. Let's look underneath why these things aren't being delegated. Oh, my people won't do it as well as I would do it.
Right.
It'll just come back with mistakes and I'll have to fix it.
Right. Well, I can tell you that in my new book that I'm working on, that I talk about how we're all control freaks. And at the very core is because we feel like we're losing control. And by not doing anything about it, we're actually that unhealthy level of control by not allowing ourselves to delegate the things that aren't things that we should be doing is exactly what ends up controlling us.
Right. So I was just coaching a CEO yesterday, and he's a new client, and one of his problems, and one of the things that came back in the 360 review was he has total control, and he doesn't delegate and he doesn't empower. Right. So we talked about that, and he's like, okay, I really need to delegate and empower and coach. I really need to do this. I said, great. So you're going to have to let your people screw up. He goes, yeah. He says, but I have to make sure that they screw up on the right things and don't screw up on the wrong things.
Right.
And he goes on to a whole thing about how he's going to do this, but he's going to make sure. And I said, look, absolutely. We're going to take baby steps. You're going to let go of control of things that don't seem to matter. But I got news for you. Just like they're going to fail at some things that you give them so that you can coach them on how to do it better, you're going to fail at giving the right stuff up. You're going to give up control on something and it's going to blow up in your face. And you need to understand that that's what's going to happen in this coaching before we take another step. Because if they're going to, this whole letting go of control is terrifying. Mm-hmm. That fear, and in certain personality types, it's life and death, right? Letting go of control, making mistakes, just goes to the core of a wound. Right, where other people, they can make mistakes.
Psychologically and biologically a need for us. So it's absolutely woven into our core.
Right. So let's go back to the to-do list. Now there's things on the to-do list that somebody asked you to do. You said, like I was the committee chair for the Boy Scouts. I was the basketball coach. I was all these things. There's things that are on your list that you didn't want to do. And now you're like, I actually shouldn't be doing this. It shouldn't be on my list. Right. Oh, now you have to go have that difficult conversation of setting a boundary, right? Or renegotiating something like, right. Oh, I have something that's due on Friday. I can't get it done. So I have my audiobook being read right now. because again, it's been 7 years and I have not read my audiobook. So I finally hired it out because it's never been a 10 for me. It's never been a commitment. I read one chapter. I hated it. So I hired it out. And the guy says, okay, I'll have it done for you on Wednesday. This was last Monday. I said, okay, he's going to be working pretty hard. Wednesday comes and goes, nothing. Thursday, Friday, I sent him an email. I said, dude, so where's my book? And he says, no, I don't hear anything. So Monday, dude, where's my book? And he goes, oh my God, I'm almost done. I need a little more time. I said, I'm fine. It's been 7 years. It can be a week. I don't care. What I really would like you to do is keep your word of, and if you're not going to keep your word, tell me. He goes, my wife tells me the same thing. She says I should say 2 weeks and then over deliver. I said, exactly. I don't care. I expect it to take 2 weeks, right? So it's supposed to be done today. So the same thing with everybody, with the things on your to-do list, right? But here's the problem. So now we're going to learn how to have difficult conversations of delegating, of setting boundaries, of saying no, of renegotiating timelines, all these things to get out of overwhelm and get things off our to-do list.
Right. They should have been there in the first place if you had taken a step back and really focused on what was most important and let go of the things that were less important, right? But everybody listening is that we create this overwhelm for ourselves. And so it's time that you when you feel that overwhelm, to say, okay, I need to change my approach because this isn't working. Right.
It's going up. You would go up river to figure out why you're overwhelming the systems in your business. But very few people go up river to figure, upstream to figure out why they're overwhelmed in their own life. And it's because they've taken on too much. They haven't triaged their to-do list. Right. So it's hard enough to sit down on a Sunday night or a Monday morning and write down your list for the week. That's hard enough. The harder part is to go, what's mine, what's not.
Right.
So here's the thing.
Tell us your key strategy, because I want to make sure I want to make sure that people get this. So what's the key strategy for you that you would give us to triage that to-do list? So let's say I've gotten to the point where I understand at the beginning of the week, I have to create my to-do list. How do I triage that?
Great. So the first thing I would have you do is you write down everything you're supposed to do for the list. So let's do a definition of a 10. And by the way, for your audience, we're going to create a web page specifically for your people, so that, because my clients won't read books because they tend to have ADD too. So I have to make little 5-minute videos for them for everything. We're going to give some of those to your people so that when they hear what I have to say, they can go back and relearn it. So the first thing that you do is you write down everything down on your list, right? You put everything there. The second thing is you look at.
Can I just, so is that everything that I have to do this week? Or is that everything that's in my head? David Allen is everything that's in your head.
Everything that everything that's, you can put everything. I actually have everybody do the David Allen thing, everything in your head.
So even if it's something I have to do in 3 weeks, where it's not due for 3 weeks, I have to, but I'm going to put it down.
That's the start. That's the first time. The first time is to dump it all out, because now we've got to triage everything that's driving you crazy.
Okay.
So now let's do the definition of a 10. The definition of a 10 is it has to be done. It absolutely has to be done. Like you get run over by a bus, still has to be done.
Okay.
Has to be done by you, and it has to be done by you today. Or if you're doing your weeks list, has to be done by you this week.
Okay.
Or here's the caveat: you have juice to do it. So like you think of a business idea, or you think of a customer to call or something, you should act on those impulses. More and more, we should be getting in touch with our impulses for our businesses and for our lives. I really should call my grandmother, or I should check on this customer. I've been thinking about him all week. I should check on this customer, right? You
put that on the list, or leave yourself time for those things that come up.
Put it on the list.
Put it on the list.
Like, oh, I haven't heard from this client in 3 weeks and they're up for renewal. Put it on the list, because your intuition is starting to come up. Now go through your list, and everything that's a 10 has to be done by you, has to be done by you this week, or you just have so much juice to do it that you really, you should honor that.
Okay.
Do that. Now you go and you look at everything else on your list. So what I do is I have them label it 1 through 10.
Okay.
10s are, so you have your 10s. Everything from 9 down is going to get crossed off your list. 9s,
So
2s, 3s.
people are saying, right? Here's what people are saying is those things have to get done too.
Do they?
I'm just telling you. So
right. So I'm telling, so it's that, and that's the
advocate.
confront, right? So now let's look at some of those things. So we start looking at those things that aren't 10s, and we start looking at them.
Right.
And how many of those, and I say, how many of those things are on your should have been done yesterday list, right? How many things are placeholders that you just keep putting on your list, keep putting on your list, keep putting on your list, and never get done? Do they really need to get done? Right. So you start to look at that. Right.
So can I ask you a question? Because I want people to understand. And also I come at it from my mindset and some of the ways that I do things. So I want to understand where you're coming from. So is this has to be done today? So this is an urgency list of what has to be done today. We're
gonna and I'm sorry for being confusing. Let's say this is Sunday night and we're just doing the week.
Right. But I guess I'm asking that because what if there's something that has to be done next week, but it is very strategic to the growth of my business, but it doesn't have to be done today, but it has to be done,
Great.
So I want
to let me go through it and then ask your questions.
Okay.
So we're going to take the things that are 10s and we put 10 next to it. We take the things that are 2s and 3s and things like that, and we start to look at them. It's a 2 this week. It's a 10 next week.
Okay.
We take that and we put it on the calendar for next week. Right.
Well, so you're going to evaluate for each one if it
just has to get off the list for this week.
Gotcha. Okay.
What happens is people start looking at stuff and going, yeah, I'm never going to do this. Yeah, this, oh, look, this was already done. So then you start to look at what needs to be delegated. Okay. So now you look at this, this action item actually should be delegated to such and such a person. So your action item no longer is the thing. Your action item is delegate this.
Delegation.
Right? Now you're going to have to confront why you wouldn't delegate all that stuff, but because that's where all the juice comes in.
Okay.
Now you look at stuff. Now you look at stuff that are 8s and 9s, and there's 8s and 9s on there, and there shoulds. It's a really great idea. I really should do this. Those are usually the things that get on the list and stay on the list because you should do them, and you're really not committed to doing them, and you're never going to do it. And this is where I get pushback, but I make my clients cross that off. Just get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Right. And they start to get a little bit panicky. Most people get ahead of me when I have them do this, and they go, Mark, my list is down to 6 or 7 things for the week.
Right. I'm good. Let's leave these on there. Is that what they say?
No. So then I say, great. What I'm trying to get you to do for the week, and then Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, was to wake up. I only want you to see your 10s. You can have other things, but only see your 10s. And usually there's 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 10s for a day.
Right.
This is the big rocks, little rocks. This is the deep work thing. This is everything everybody's talking about, is focus on the important and the impactful and all that. But this is the psychological way to get to it, is these are the only things. If I die today, I want these things done. If I go to bed at 11 o'clock and I wake up and go, oh my God, I didn't get this done, I get out of bed and I do it, because now I'm learning to keep my word to myself. I said this was a 10. I said I was committed to doing this. And that was the thing. I had to train myself to keep my word to myself. Right. So one of the things I put on my list every morning was the gym. What I noticed after a week was if I got up and went to the gym at 5:30 in the morning, like I usually did, I went to the gym. If I didn't, and I said I was going to go at 3 o'clock, I never went. Right. So if I got up and I missed the gym, I didn't keep it on my list that I'm going to get to the gym at 3 o'clock, because I know I lie to myself. I just cross it off.
Right.
So now
some other psychological things to that there's a certain time of the day that certain things need to get done when you know that they're not going to get done later, right? So the gym is a perfect example for a lot of people. It's not that they're lying to themselves, but their day gets ahead of them. And so you have to know when the right time is to do different tasks to make sure that they get done.
Right. For me, writing copy is always going to be in the morning also.
Accountability as well. So
right. But here's the thing. The hard thing to realize is when you cross some of these things off, if they want to be a 10, they'll come back.
Mhm.
So when we go through this whole process, and again, there's a little 5-minute video that actually you can watch, me go along, and you can see it's much easier with the visual to do it. But now when you do this, now you find you have another problem. Oh my God, I have to have the difficult conversations to get these things off my list, right? I have to go set a boundary. I have to go tell someone, that thing I said I was going to get you done by Wednesday, I'm not going to, I'm not going to be able to get that done until next week. I know I said I would do it. What can we do? Is it a problem if I just extend, that kind of thing? Or if you're going to your boss, sometimes you're going to your boss and you're saying, you know what, we're overextended on this project. Can you help me prioritize, which we're going to do? Now you're having conversations, right?
Right.
So the reason that it's so much easier to be busy is because we don't want to have those sweaty palm conversations with people to get those things off our list. One of the biggest reason to not delegate is because leaders don't want to have those coaching conversations. It's so much easier to get the work done than to have the coaching conversations of delegating, having it come back, coaching them to do it better, having them come back, coaching it to do it better. 3 weeks from now, you will now have a new leader who does something at the level that you want them to have it, where you would have in the past stayed up until 12 o'clock at night getting it done yourself. But those extra miles are the things that are going to downstream help your overwhelm, because then now you're going to have people on your team who do the level of work that you do.
Absolutely. So just as because we're running out of time here, and I want to ask you a couple of last questions. So your major strategy is for people to get some awareness, write everything down, and then pick out their 10s, so that they pick out the things that are really the most important. And this is the strategy in order to accomplish that. Take all of those other things off so that you only have on your list those things that are the highest priority to you,
that you're committed to getting done.
And that you're committed to get done. And then that way you can work from that, and you can decommit or ask clarifying questions and everything with the rest of your list.
Right. And you can still do some of those other things.
Of course.
But
Buffett says is he has 2 lists. He has that list of the top 3 things that he must be done by him today. And then he has the failover list of when he has extra time, then he can go to those other things that are also sort of ranked. So absolutely, we need to have more than one list. We have the short list, and then we have the other list.
Awesome.
So tell me, I ask almost every guest this question. I'm just curious as to how you would answer it. How do you define productivity and why?
That's changed. For me, productivity is actually keeping your word to yourself and doing the things that you said you wanted to accomplish.
Awesome. And, in terms of, what do you think is outside of, no, let's ask a different question. So there are a lot of people out there that we talked about systems. And so I'm just curious, what types of tools outside of this list, what's your top 2 tools? Like if everything was taken off your desktop and your phone, what are the, outside of calendar and those things, what are the top 2 tools that you put back on because they help you to be more focused and more productive?
I can't live without a whiteboard.
Okay.
So for me, like keeping lists on electronic devices don't work for me. I need paper. So I have to have my 10s up on a whiteboard where I can see them. Okay. So I do my brainstorming, and I do my, everything happens on a whiteboard.
Do you have a cool whiteboarding program that you use? Like,
no, just markers and stand in the middle of my office with my brain shooting off all kinds of ideas and go there.
Cool. There's tools like Miro and things like that are available online that you can actually collaborate these lists to with people. So just something for people who are listening. There's some great collaboration tools that give you that whiteboard functionality as well.
It's interesting when it comes to tools, like my assistant set up a whole Trello thing for me and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm never going to look at it. You have to send me a list of things you're waiting for every single day. That's part of your job, is to send me a list of things you're waiting for every day. And it can be this every day. I don't care. Just send me a list, right? So that I'm not thinking about it, because I will never get to it.
Absolutely. And I think that's important for people to understand. You know, I help people to see that there's a lot of different tools, but we have to decide which tools work best for our personality type. Like somebody will send me an Excel sheet that's all colored up and everything like that, and I feel overwhelmed looking at it, and I just am like, I'm done with this.
Yes.
And I feel that way sometimes too about these Trello lists. I don't know why, but I like my lists in a different way. So I totally get it. I like to see everything on one page. And so whiteboards and paper is still something that I do too. So, you know, everybody has to see what works best for them. And that's to identify what works and what doesn't work. And of course, when we take our businesses and our lives to a new level, that might change, because we have a different level of demands that are coming at us. And so we may find that some of the tools and techniques that we used in the past, they get us to a certain level, but then we hit a plateau and we need to build new skills or find new tools or something like that.
Right. So the second tool is a toss up between my journal, you know, just being able to write and journal, and my meditation cushion. Because again, this takes presence. This takes presence of mind. It takes you being able to understand yourself, to be honest with yourself. What are you willing to do? What you're not willing to do, right? And then what are you willing to do to be able to get those things off your list? Because sometimes, you know, you have a volatile person you're working with, and the 10 is avoiding the conflict, right? You know, you can't delegate to this person.
Unwritten 10. You're saying the unwritten 10.
No, the absolute 10 is, I don't want to have a conflict with that person. It should be delegated with them. They're not under my, you know, I don't have authority to make, I don't want to deal with the fallout. So now is where you got to put your big boy and big girl pants on and say, I'm no longer a victim of this. I'm choosing to do this because I don't want the conflict. Right. Because, and just be great. Like, be honest with, like, I don't want to deal with that. So it's an interesting, but you have to learn who you are in order to be able to slow down and get the right things done.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your technique. We're going to put show links available for people to those videos that you had suggested, also to your book, so that people can get a hold of that. Is there anything that you wanted to share with us before we close out the show today that I didn't ask?
No, but I just watched a video. There's a young lady who does this whole ADHD channel and tools and strategies to deal with it. And what I sent it to a couple people just to notice how kind she was to herself. She's so loving and kind and gentle with herself as she's learning new strategies, as she's doing this. The world is really pretty nasty these days to deal with. And if you're not going to be kind to yourself, you know, like that, start there. Like that's my message for today.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. So just tell us what's the best site to reach you. I know we're going to put all those links, but just so that we have it auditory for people.
MarkJSilverman.com. Mark the letter J, Silverman.com. And then the link for your resources is going to be a separate one.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you all for being here. Come on, you know that you have challenges with overwhelm. And the question is it in your to-do list? What is it that's creating that overwhelm for you in your life? So the first thing that Mark talks about, and that anybody talks about, is getting clarity on that awareness of what it is. So this is a way to really work through your to-do list. And hey, if this method doesn't work for you, check out his materials. You don't know until you look at it. And if this doesn't, find another one, right? So if you're feeling that overwhelm, find a process, because they all work. It's just a matter of which one works best for you. So thank you all for being here. Please subscribe. I'm looking to get people to follow more formally. So because I'm going to be doing some changes in the podcast, I'm going to be doing some additional smaller segments where I'm going to be sharing some tips and tricks. And so I want you to make sure that you get updated on all the things that are happening around Take Back Time and what's coming up in the future. So thank you for listening. My name is Penny Zenker, and this is Take Back Time. We'll see you in the next episode.